Hi everyone, this is Drew from Out of Sight Games. I am the sound designer for Heroes Call, and I wanted to create a couple of videos discussing or doing a walkthrough of some of the sound design that's in the game, specifically related to the implementation. So here I have an FMOD Studio session of Heroes Call, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about the combat in the game. Specifically, going to look at just the melee attacks and just sort of the nuts and bolts behind how that works. And let me begin by just giving a little bit of a briefer on how combat works in a Hero's Call. So combat is on a turn-by-turn basis. You explore the world in a 3D environment, and then a random encounter starts with an enemy party. So it's turn-based, but it's still, all the audio still takes place three-dimensionally. So the listener perspective is from the center of the player's party, and the enemy party is displayed out in front of you. Each individual enemy spaced evenly in a sort of semicircle. There are a whole list of attack skills that can be used by any individual character on a map during combat. Today I'm just going to talk about attack skills related to the weapon in hand of the attacker. So depending on what you have equipped, it can be anything from an axe or another type of blunt object like a staff or a mace, to a sword, which can be a large sword or a smaller sword, daggers, or ranged objects, so ranged weapons rather. So bows, bows and crossbows are pretty much all the ranged weapons available in Heroes Call. So for this video, I'm just going to be discussing how combat audio works for just the simple melee attack, which when you're playing the game would appear as just attack, and that would again depend on what sound plays depends on what you have equipped, not only what the attacker has equipped, but also the target, what type of armor they have equipped. So as you can already start to gather, there's a whole lot of possibilities that can play out depending on what's equipped, what type of person you're attacking, because then when you throw attack and injured vocals in there, there can be a whole range of possibilities. So let's dig in. So go ahead and start with just the FMOD event for attack whenever a one-handed sword is equipped by the attacker. So I'm going to go ahead and play this event, and then I'll sort of explain what's going on here. So the first thing you'll notice is that there's a big gap of silence at the beginning of this event. That is because for any type of melee attack, the attacker is going to be running up to their opponent before they strike. And so in that bit of silence, there will be mostly just two things. There will be footsteps and then an attack vocal, which are both handled sort of outside of this event. The footsteps are played as each one is an individual FMOD event that is triggered by the game every, I think, 0.5 seconds or maybe 0.33 seconds for running. I can't quite remember that timing there. The reason that the game logic plays the footsteps in that manner is because depending on what type of surface the attacker will be running across, which could change. It could go from a gravel to a water, or from a muddy surface to a stone surface. Depending on what the actual terrain is between the two characters, the footsteps will change accordingly, just like they will whenever you're exploring the game in 3D, in the sort of exploration 3D mode. And then the second thing, like I said, that will be occurring is the attack vocal, which gets played by this once the cursor passes this marker here. So I'll go ahead and explain the markers now. All the markers here, save for I think just one, are used by the game logic to play a specific, either play a specific event when the marker is passed, or to begin moving the event in 3D space, or stop moving it. So at the beginning of all of these events is a travel start marker. What happens when the cursor passes that is the game, through specific scripting done by our programmer, will, once the cursor passes that marker, the game says, okay, I'm going to start moving the location of this event now, where the sound is emanating from regarding just this specific FMOD event. And it starts moving it from the attacker's original location to the opponent's location. And it does that over a specific amount of time. And what's cool about designing a game that has no visuals, as the combat in a Hero's Call does, is that I can decide how long that should be. And so I do that with this user property over here. So the game logic also looks for this user property called travel length to tell it how long in seconds it should take for the event to travel between those two locations. So for this one, it's 1.3 seconds, which I believe is also the case for all of the other melee attacks. So when the cursor passes travel start, it begins moving the event. It stops moving it once the 1.3 seconds has stopped, which is also when this marker travel stop is passed. This marker is actually just for my benefit. It lets me, I move all of the individual pieces of the event where they sound the best, and then place the travel stop marker accordingly, and then just calculate by subtracting the amount of time between these two markers and placing it in the user property. Since the travel start is at the beginning of the event, the amount of time is simply going to be wherever the marker is. So moving on to some of these other markers here, the attack vocal. When that's passed, the game logic will tell it to play a specific character's combat attack vocal. As you can see over here, we'll take Alexia, for example. This is her combat attack vocal event, which plays any of these three attack vocals randomly. It's going back to our melee attack events. I'm actually going to open up this one. So this bit here is actually just for testing purposes. This is tied to a parameter. It has a condition on it. Attack vocal testing, I believe, is what the full name of this parameter is. So the game actually does not look at this parameter at all, because it does not, or it does not try to set it at all. And because it does not try to set it, it's always going to stay at a value of 0. So what I do so that I can place all of these things in time where I want them is simply place a parameter on it that the game is never going to look at, and only have it play whenever its value is 1. So if we put this on 1, let's hear what it sounds like without it first, actually. Now if we change attacking vocal testing to 1, we hear this sort of generic beggar attack sound that I've put in. Again, just for me to get a sense of where I should be placing these things. So I place it there, and then I place the attack vocal marker at the beginning of this clip. So then I know that the game is always going to play whatever attack vocal it needs to play precisely at this time. And that's depending on, obviously, which attacker is striking. So if it's a beggar, that actually will sound, if it's beggar 1, rather, it will sound like it'll sound like this clip. If it's Matthias or the main female or male player, obviously it's going to use those characters' attack vocals. There's also impact vocals. So again, very similar. Whenever this is passed, the target is going to play either an injured or death sound, depending on if enough XP has been taken to actually kill the target. Then it'll play a death sound. Otherwise, it'll play an injure sound. So again, here as a stand-in, just for testing purposes, I have the Bandit 1 injured vocals, and a different parameter tied to it called impact vocal testing, which again will only play if it's set to 1, which is never going to happen in the game, because the game is never going to attempt to set this. So if we have attack vocal and impact vocal set to 1, we can get a good sense of what this will sound like in the game. So now moving on to the actual impact sound components in one of these melee attacks. So here we're on the attack event whenever a two-handed type of sword is equipped by the character. And you'll see here, each of these is an impact sound. And they are all different according to what type of armor is equipped by the target. So we have chainmail, flesh, hide, leather, plate mail, and scale, which is you can think of it sort of like a dragon's hide. So the first one, the one that we are hearing right now, is chainmail. So we'll play it again. And the reason that we're hearing that one is because there's a parameter called armor. These are all parameters now that the game actually will set. So anytime that one of these is called, it's also going to set a parameter from 1 to 6, a parameter with the armor parameter with a value rather of 1 to 6. Each integer designating a certain type of armor. So 1 is chainmail. We go to here, we see that flesh, so no armor, is 2. Hide is 3, and so on down to scale. The other parameters that you see here, miss, reflect, and parry, are all sort of a binary switch. If the attack is missed, obviously the game is going to set this parameter to 1. And if it's set to 1, as you can see here, none of these impacts are then going to play, which makes sense, because if an attack is missed, you don't want to hear it sound like the enemy was actually struck. So let's go ahead and take out the attack vocal, because that's what would actually happen in game. Keep the, attack vocal, remove the impact vocal, and set the miss parameter to a value of 1. So as you can see, none of these armor impact sounds played, but this sound did play, and this is the miss sound for a two-handed sword. So there's a few more parameters up here. Reflect, this will, the reason this parameter exists is it tells basically if the attack is reflected, it's also not going to play a miss or a parry or any of the weapon impact sounds. If it's parried, same thing, except it's going to allow the game to play the parry sound, mute all the others. The parry and reflect sounds are separate events that are played by the game, which we can see here. Here's the reflect sound. Here's a parry sound, which there are 3 different types, all randomized. Cool. Let's go back to this. There's a critical hit parameter. Again, can't see the whole name of it, but there it is, for testing. So any of the ones that say for testing are ones that the game won't actually attempt to set. So critical is just, it allows me to see what the critical hit sound will be like for this object, or for this event. So let's see. So the critical sound, as well as the parry and reflect sounds, all have markers that if they are passed, then that's where the game logic will know when to play them. I don't tell it when to play a critical sound or a parry sound or a reflect sound. That's all done. The game will be told that from the outcome of a specific skill. So, which is just the logic of combat. It's already built into the logic of combat. So it knows if it's being reflected. And so it says, okay, I'm also going to look for a reflect sound in addition to just playing the attack sword to hand event. It says, when should I play it? I'll play it when it passes the marker here. And then the last one here is this TTS marker, which also has an accompanying testing parameter. So the TTS is text to speech. So this is sort of the accessible component for blind gamers whenever they're playing the game, to get immediate feedback of the outcome of a particular skill. So it'll tell them how much damage was taken, or if a certain effect went into play. It's usually just damage. All the other stuff is usually kept after a round of attacks. So this is just a quick little sample clip that I took from the game while playing it, just to get, again, a sense of where to place it, or where to place the marker rather, for this particular event.
123 damage.
So that 123 damage is the sample, just to give an idea of where the TTS is going to play for this particular event. And we tell it where it's going to play by placing the marker. So here's a quick little demonstration of what this all looks like for each type of weapon here.
God! 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 123 damage. 123 damage. God! 123 damage. God!
So I think it's a pretty good overview of how combat works, just from a melee attack skill perspective. Once we start looking at other skills, things start to get not necessarily more complicated, but they just work a little bit differently. And I'll save those for another video. You can follow me on Twitter at PressB for Becker, or if you search Drowsy Drew, you can go to my website, beckersound.com, to see some other examples of games I've worked on. And you can go follow more for Heroes Call or Out of Sight Games at outofsightgames.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.